Hey guys, and welcome back to the Poetic Ramble. I am your host, Maria Legier, and this is the final part of Lonely Train Station Blues, aptly titled Lonely Train Station Blues. We're in for the long haul on this one. Sit down, grab a glass of your most pretentious wine, and enjoy. 1. Pour another glass of wine, sing this song another time, so that time and time again we return to shelter in the dusk, and time again see these shadows closing in. So we know that, time and time again, the clock will strike, the hour turn, the minutes twist and churn, then burn. And all the dust of our shared history, accumulated in the corners of our concrete buildings' building blocks, will be removed and wiped away and hastily forgotten, to be spread apart and thrown to our long-lost howling winds of now, nowhere, no how, no, now. And all our visions, and all our songs, our assorted story times and fairy tales and myths or legends moulded on the shoulders and the bones of long-forgotten hero tales will burn and then be thrown away, be cast away into some vast and gaping void where stranger tongues tell stranger tales of stranger pasts that don't belong. And these past paths that once we walked slip-slide into loss. All past futures once we dared to dream will never more be dreamt, as our lonely streets and legendary beats go horribly boom in the dawn and in the dawning of the spade and neutered night that see future manifestos manifest terrors we never dared to dream. As the coming of the night and singularity dawn of our choking cough and stupor-drugged societies and their apocalyptic malaise find our trash-heap recluses, our bearded hermit madmen, left for dead and long forgotten, or else hidden here and there, deceived and truthfully neglected by silver-tongued thieves stealing all our songs and poetry, all our history, our cultural peculiarity. When longing some and loving some, when believing some and beholding some new spectacle or something bloody spectacular in fits of visionary journeys or assaults of shell-shocked prophecy in the depths of a lone drunkard's poetry that becomes the doom and then the downfall in the broken cataclysmic eyes of fevered mad society, then truth will die, and beauty die, and substance die, and share the same shallow grave or long neglected tomb, forever mourned by a few yet mostly dead and forgotten. In the midst of belligerence, and in the stream of decadence, lies this cultured malady wherein we are told to only listen and believe to slithering serpentine electorates, bedridden bedraggled horoscopes told by those that lost the scope and lost the game, or saw it swiftly exchanged for play-pretend midnight blues where mothers sang us lullabies and wiped our brows of fevered sweat. The faulty few whose lines of song were murmured sinking suns that saw the light of beauty appear then disappear and reappear in woodlands, where our shapes were left standing lonely there, to howl so loud and mournfully with fear and then with terror and with pain at the coming of the night and of the bedridden dawn. This dawn and dawning of the curved and bleeding sword, that saw the blood feud fuel perpetual machines of war, a rhetorical war that saw the language barricade language in our minds and likewise in the midst of all our stories told to children that were hiding there within this flowing veil of censorship, where none accepted particulars or spectaculars, but the monochromatic monotheist escalation of war and subsequent subordination beneath the crescent moon and crimson star. And sung we so, and sang we such, then suffered long beneath bare-naked lady branches shaped from our longing loving hands, that sought acceptance in the fold or in the hole that was the fortress of our demise, where we wounded venerable warrior ways and threw our hands up in despair and were then led to isolation wards, confined to the mumbled babblelogues of unassuming so-called beauty, localized in our streets and on our inner thighs where naked scars cast tranquilized criss-cross shades on eyes that saw and then beheld the blood-orange Sunday, the blood-tainted sun, the blood-frenzied horde that came charging to remove, remodel and regurgitate our news as well as news of news that yet should come, that yet would come and yet would be forgotten, out there all alone within these long and lonely nights that drew these lines of silver cum in the sand, and in the hearts and spines of children that played childish and childlike midnight travels across the borders of our emotional disconnect from us and history and heritage, and the ground beneath our feet, where we used to walk with ease and with long-standing memories. And we here now, lost and being lost again, and never born or else reborn, never again springing to life and splendid form from water's depths to sing our own songs again, for we are forced to sing another stranger's song in place of songs that once were ours. And be, and see, and disappear, in this state of stately governmental overreach and arching backs that broke our spines and whiplashed our necks from bending over backwards, to do, and do, and do, or else to die, so we should never speak or sing again. Or at the least, never sing again those songs that we once used to sing, or to never tell the tales once again which we were once allowed to tell. Just for us to drown in contrived and haphazardly convenient so-called lack of cultural difference, drowned in epiphanies from sacramental blood cult leaders of some high and mighty pointless university degree that show as manners of national decree, feral beasts that are forever devouring paintings of a land where blood is drawn and veins are filled with sand, as coarse and harsh as a lover's whispered words in laughter as she leaves, to seek some fresh pasture on her knees, for strangers' bellowed howling laughter, howling hollow mockeries that paints a stranger's sign in slow and deliberately dubious strokes in a past ejaculate trance that lasts 100 years, that bleeds and feeds the lust for blood, that delivers blood for lust, to give our brave and stunning paradox tongue of home this new coat of homeless paint. Please pour another glass of wine, and sing your penny dreadful rhymes, and leave and long and love and live, and break and shake and crack the snake, and be no one, nothing, nowhere. And sell your soul, and sell your head, and sell your mind, and sell your heart, and sell your hands, and sell your spines, and sell your thoughts, and all your dreams, and all your feats, and all your desires. So all your life, and all your you, will fade, will be taken, will be gone. 2. Sitting in the rain, we approximate desire. Dutifully neglecting patience, we drown in rains of desire. Stranger things have come and gone and left us in a state of woe, suddenly deliberately delirious. Finding neither home nor hearth where home once used to be, we keep clinging to this winter's breath that chills our spines and bones and minds. We seek shelter where no shelter is, in helter-skelter deadpan minds that prophetize, vast vagabond eyes, upon the canvassed kaleidoscope, that suffered once and then forgot once half-spoken truths of impermanence. In order to dream, one must first sleep. In order to sleep and dream, one must be unconsciously watching one's own mind. Without regret or shameful shades, to seek ever deeper depths of self and soul and heart and mind, of spine and balls and courage in the depths that, never sullied by the hands of time or of doctorate degree holders' cowardly chokehold grip, so desire become despair, and despair become desire, through permanent bed-sit sores on the butt cheeks of news anchors that false flag-like anchored self-chosen truths, to feed the building of a fundament of, or bedrock upon which to build a towering inferno, to plummet down and rend, rip, tear. That then rendered fear and vice-gripped terror, chosen by the chosen few who never once felt rain descend upon a wondrous winter's eve to kill the roaring heat of the fire, or never yet came down to see those that died so they should live. We live in weird kamikaze times, in bloody raging wars of will, on the whim of whomsoever flew by quickly and so egotistically sought the chance to bask in this transcendent sunlight's glaring glow of immediate celebrity by virtue of the virtuous and doubtlessly narcissist, whose sole preoccupation is to be seen as morally clean and virtuous as a saint for being holier than thou. And we allow deceased desire to reign supreme, lending no thought to nothing but desire, and immediate fulfillment of said desire, and such needs as we believed were there, in the instance, and the second, and the tick and then the tock, of this horrid societal clock, of momentary stopwatch tyranny, that rules our lives, that governs all. And we allowed venomous immediacy to usurp the blessed throne of intimacy, to steal our simple bliss of life, to lose ourselves in a lover's love, replaced it with merely a lover's hasty grip and then release, and then another lover's hasty grip, and yet another hasty release, and then retreat, and then repeat. Seeking ever and always fresher thrills and fresher still to feed a sudden urge for dopamine and self-deification. To feel better still for being adored and wanted and lusted for by someone else that plays along with our primal dance, our reptile brain, in hollow tunes that plays in tune with a junkie mind that seek constantly a fresh-faced fix or better high, that chase the dragon in immediate perpetuity and perpetual immediacy. Men choose to label it as freedom, as perceptual individual liberty, this chronic addiction to dopamine and adrenaline, perpetual fixation on happening now, now, and happiness now, immediately now and now. Hollowly wishing for this one slice of cheap trick happiness, of pinpoint immediate euphoria and ecstasy, to linger in the mind eternally. As though it should be permanently wired onto the psyche as the only saving grace of life that gracefully caressed the eternal high and mighty high of self-imposed adrenaline infatuation, nervous, trembling dopamine addiction, self-sought serotonin selectively released into the pining pineal gland of those who never learned to live for the present and the future simultaneously, those that pine for immediacy and for immediate release of the past in the present. That pine for immediate release of the present in the future, a cancer of the mind's eye that views nothing of the past and nothing of the future, that see nothing of the present as the end result, seeing no solution then but a future search for the next angry needle bliss fix and fixation in the presence of the present to alleviate or aggregate the boredom and the stressors of the past. All our summers taste of tense, severely dense, prosaic rapture, a post-modern self-thought and smugly sung examination of one's lack of celebrity and of celebration, which has become a goddamned God-given right in this man-made search for substance, truth and then for beauty, in a culture that is lacking substance, truth and beauty. All our winters taste of preset patterns in the present tense, slip-sliding atomically and automatically outwards from internal rapture that ruptured and revealed a truth presently presented as the present past through mind-numbing pastures and particulars that saw the future in the past and made that past and future merge into this tense present tense blues, through meager past tense reaffirmation of the present future, seen in eyes of bloody idols and icons and iconoclasts that dared defy the norm, that held the standards waving high upon the shores where once we stepped ashore and claimed that substance, truth and beauty would remain blessed truth and long-loved beauty, internally, eternally. All our springs that sprung from hope spring now from lack of hope and loss of hope, through hopeless deviations. Strangled, cold and dead by the popular vote of voters' fraud which we lost, black and bruised in streams of collapsed consciousness that bastardized playful literary whimsy in a forceful application of confused conundrums, that made word salad greens made to fill a hole left by lack of proper meat, by ham on rye and rye on ham, crafted, then neglected, dreamt, forgotten by some alluring stranger's charm and nightmare-fueled harm. All our autumn's foliage, no cleared of greenery, became cemented in a branded, brain-dead thrust that thrust and thrust its lack of cock into the sockets of our eyes to make us see insanity as wretched true epiphanies, as something made to aid us in escaping these dim corridors, these poorly lit transient states of being, that would elevate us to the very heights of society in drugged and blissful sleep and slumber, that made us choose to be blind and become oblivious to truth and to substance and to beauty, in the present and the past and in the future, as eternity reaffirms and reappears and happens all the time, all around us, everywhere. The vicious dance of time that will repeat and then repeat some more, to re-establish past hierarchical, heretical dominance in the present and the unavoidable future sealed and baked in this raw New Deal. 3. We have never seen impermanence so permanent as that which permanently burns its imperfection upon our eyes and minds with its maggot teeth that lost our love and lonely longing, where we now, at the end of our cumulus wits, flew and fled across the sky and fell upon the ground and snow and covered us with tears and tearing of the soul and self and sanity entwined in our hands and arms and worm-infested minds and brains and psyche. All three longed and loved and lost in hedonistic depth embrace that choked the cock and killed the balls, and fanatically fanned the smoke out of the room, that fanned our madness into our midst, into our chambered hearts, all lost and drowned in venom and in spite and violent treacherous designs that sought the death and all destruction, through nuclear blast pangs of pain, all grown up, that blew our hands and feet clean off, to leave us only bloody stumps, that never are to be reattached. Yet which we imagine to be reattached all the same in anemic terror dreams that lost its grip, then brought cerebral hemorrhage and blind dead strokes that stank of sulphur and burnt hair, to us who sought this play pretend future bliss in long-lost caverns of Chernobyl blast academia, or art, or poetry, or literature once so fine, so well regarded. Magnificent explorations of the psyche and the psyched weirdness of the vivid Western vocabulary that now, gazed upon from without and from within, is seen as lost death, terror-stricken and brutal subjugation of the earth and all humanity from cold, cooked worms and maggots that do not understand anything above and beyond the immediate knee-jerk death of solipsist solidarity with psyche rape of our long-sought dreams, that lost in the gloom of night a fog-light or fog-horn, that ought to guide us to safety, but only steer the ship upon the sheltered shores of narcissism, that muddied the waters, then caused us to drown in wild and invigorated self-aggrandizing virtue signaling of dubious morality, where ethics play no part and all is dead to eyes and minds' eyes that never saw with clarity, yet sought a ferocious, fervent fever admirer in the hands and paths of palms that crossed the sand and tundra, seeking self and future aid for all that fell onto our knees and begged forgiveness for past sins to be castrated permanently by good times that stretched and etched and, far too long, became the staple and the norm that caused all grievance, whether real or utterly imagined, to become personal transcendent Ayurvedic bliss in the spiritually starved minds and thoughts and tongues and teeth of ensnared and entranced kids with material allegiance to the future throne of nowhere where nowhere or how exist. Where nothing exists but the open doors, swung into existence, by a multitude of stupidity in the rim-job realm of mad despotic underhanded slavery, and nebulous cloud dust, accumulated in the eyes of slaves to wrath and slaves to anger and resentment, or bitter jealousy, where free-line singers of perpetual victimhood blues and woe is me and woe is all and woe upon this world of ours, stand and sing within the ruins of this world that our hands built, upon the blood spilt on the beaches of Normandy, or that drip dropped into the ocean to be swallowed by the salt and bullets through the brain in trenches dug from madhouse cliffs, and in hysteria sought and sung and labelled thusly fascist cohabitants of colonial transgressions upon the noble savage and his kicks in magic peasant jungles tribal and so free and willingly free, in huts and songs that sung a stranger's dream which we are not allowed to sing, and mystical mumbo-jumbo and fantastical bliss and bliss fantastic which brought and bought upon the shore and seas and core of reason, intellect and beauty, that saw dead and then saw dying at the feet of our wardens, falling into histrionic fits of soul despair for lack of soul food and fulfillment of the self. Where sought we once the ego or the self, yet found there only mud and bones ground to dust and then forgotten, kept on display in glass-case shelves that fought the shame of life well lived, and hid the strange disharmony maddened by a sensation of guilt for living in a world so wild and wicked and ferociously violent, yet living good and living free and living as though one would expect to live and not be killed outside at any moment or any hour. So govern all and let all in instead, and homes all anchored to the sky, and high-flying and alluring hopes, and wild weird wicked harmonies that sung and later on that stung so hard and brutal where reality struck, so blind and dumb, and so infantile reasoning upon the bed-shattered dead that was the dream of borderless utopia, now clamouring for false hope. Beneath the walls of self-segregated tribalism reigned supreme beyond the hazy mirror maze of mad insanity or self-congratulatory glee. Then fall, and then behold the future towering inferno, maddened by the bloody pulp that stood and saw and gazed beyond the permanent impermanence of fear, and terrorized fear-mongering only futility in future, where the dead and dying and decaying there upon the brushed-up roses in a stranger's dream and stranger dreams, that has yet to die and yet to render unconscious the collective subconscious from televised televangelist political preachers preaching political platitudes that mean absolutely nothing and can't be trusted anymore, anywhere, any time. 4. Here, now, standing in the shades of society, as society turns to rubbish, haze and dust, where once we sat in frigid yesteryears and watched with glee as all turned stagnant, then in turns turned toxic, tainted with the rust from blood or heavy metals leaking into the cum-stained drinking waters of deadpan, flaccid revolutionary pen-pal peckers miserably play-pretending revolution for the loss of high excitement in their safe-sheltered homes and hearts and lives and hollow bones, failing to bone the high priestess of permanent neoteny and her mighty state of overdose hysteria. We lost the plot in safe zones built from ruptured dreams of sheltered miniature madness, gone completely apeshit in the high and mighty dementia of proposed intelligence hidden in the folds of insane academia, turned on its head and gone haywire primitive for lack of lust and footholds. So primitive now that it turns to pure tribalism, lost in locomotion or the thrill of thundering applause for every nonsensical syllable uttered in a moral virtue grandstanding that fought the lines of reason and of beauty and then won the soulless prize of being heard, even when they have nothing to say. The monotonous monologues from babbling conveyor belt hordes that churn and churn the same drudgery and naked protoplasmic insecurity into the wraith-folded ears and hearts of every man that seek only peace and possible prosperity, for him and then for his, will listen to the serpent hiss, and take it then for truth, for coming from the lips and trembling fingertips and hips of those who are supposedly much more clever than he is, on account of them being lost within the egotist halls of cock-twaddle professorial degrees or subdivided bachelor degrees minimized to the nth degree. He will then turn his back on what once he took for truth, for wanting only to do good, then fall into the hole of wanting only holes fulfilled within his soul and shackled self that stood the test of time, until such time as time itself should die, and he then find himself alone, upon the ruins of a life that dealt its final blow, by demanding his sacrifice to be greater yet than already it is, or was, or always have been. Beneath the shadows of the walls and towers that tower there above his head, that keep society transfixed within, that keep its pondering judgment hard upon its ruptured shoulder shells, that whisper majestic tales of woe and worry, that he is death incarnate, evil white man tyranny made flesh. And sit there then, longing to belong, or to become that which he is told he must become, to be a true and honest man in times of trials such as these, to give his all and everything to those who are far worse off than he, which is, according to the whims of revolutionary eulogies murmured by the rat-pack few, whose flaccid cocks and failing hips tremble so eternally. Everyone that is not he or of his tribe of patriarchal cis-het white-faced overlords, that supposedly subjugate and then enslave everyone who is not him and his and of his tribe of patriarchal tyrants, that is to be shamed into compliance, and then killed in factories to feed the frenzy of the revolution that came and went, and saw us all accomplish nothing, where we sat and gazed upon the stars and then the sun and then the moon, waiting for it all to end, so we should not have to raise our arms in arms, or fly the banners in response to the nonsense shot our way from frigid waste-bin knights, and cocks and cunts that killed our truth and choked our beauty, that hid all truth and buried all beauty, behind and beneath word-salad nonsense and atavistic moral relativistic gibberish, full of sad songs and uncertain rustling of the frail and frenzied frantic few, whose dead-eye shots and red-hand rape of sanity saw nihilism become the norm, despite obviously believing in something. And we sat here and let it happen, inch by inch and death by death. We saw it come, and we let it pass, this madness that now eludes our grasp and passed us by at breakneck speeds, that broke our necks and tender hearts, for wanting only to belong and to become, part of all of this and all of that, all that tit and all that tat. So that now we believe that we can only sit and only watch, as the trains come and as the trains leave, carrying no one nowhere in the dream that was the West, or in the dream that was to live in love and to be free, to be at liberty to speak and do, to express, emote and to exist as only we could wish to do. So that now we believe that we can only sit alone in train station waiting rooms, pining for the days to come that will see all this one day erased, so that we return to better days of less permanent confusion, less cataclysmic despair, through fire and brimstone preachers preaching political platitudes for cheap woke points to win the votes of those sheltered and temperamental few, who do not need to sit alone and sing that solitary song that we now sing, the lonely train station blues of those who have nowhere to go, who have nowhere to be. And that, I think, was that. I hope you enjoyed all these ramblings enough to consider purchasing my collection of poetry. And I'll catch you next time. This is Muriel, signing off.